Welcome to the T. Allen Haynes Radio Show. Conversations with elite business leaders from around the world. And now, here is your host, T. Allen Haynes.
Welcome back to the show. We've got a great guest for you today. We have Syed S. Hussain, and he is a highly innovative global executive, thought leader, advisor, investor, and serial entrepreneur. He currently serves in a dual capacity as both the CEO of the Americas and Global Chief Commercial Officer for BANKEX, a top 50 fintech company that leverages blockchain technology to build the Internet of Assets, where he runs all of the Americas operations and holds global responsibilities for all sales, marketing, partnerships, and the overall client experience. Syed has gained a diverse set of experiences across a variety of industries. Syed has gained a diverse set of experiences across a variety of industries, while also launching multiple ventures throughout the process that have included several successful exits, and the first of which was a company that he founded while still a senior in high school. Throughout his career, Syed has taken on multiple roles, including as Director of Digital Transformation, Head of Analytics, Executive Director, Chief Information Officer, Chief Revenue Officer, Chief Strategy Officer, and Chief Executive Officer. Syed is a mixed martial arts MMA enthusiast who lives in New Jersey with his wife and 3 kids. Welcome to the show, Syed.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be on.
Oh, we're super excited to have you on the show. We know you've got lots of nuggets for our audience, so let's get right into it. Tell us a little bit about your business and the types of clients that you're helping.
Sure. So I'm the CEO for the Americas for BANKEX. BANKEX, who we are an emerging technology organization that focuses on bringing blockchain to the capital markets. So think of us essentially as one of the leading digital investment banks onto the blockchain. And as a result of that, our focus is to take real-world assets, digitize them, tokenize them, securitize them, and thereby create new markets for the emerging digital economy.
Excellent. So that sounds very exciting in this day and age. Absolutely. So did you just wake up one day and decide you were going to do this? What led you to this field?
Oh boy. So my background is I'm a serial entrepreneur, and I got my start into the space during the .com boom. So during that time, I was a senior in high school, and that's when I launched my first company, which was focusing on building the piping and the plumbing for this thing called the Internet. So I got involved in that space, again, early 90s. And by the time I graduated high school, I had opportunities to go into Fortune 500 firms and learn from the best of the best and how they were actually applying this technology in an enterprise space and within that capacity. So from there, I started getting more and more exposure towards the data and analytics arena. So I graduated from the infrastructure side of things into the data side of things, and then I started getting into strategy. And all this while I was doing that, at the same time, one industry that intrigued me quite a bit was the capital market. So I started to get more and more involved on that world. It fascinated me, and I learned how to apply both emerging tech with emerging finance. And fast forward to a couple of years ago, about a year and a half ago, one thing that I kept on hearing about was this thing called Bitcoin, digital currencies and cryptocurrencies. And I initially came into this thing as a cynic. I'm like, well, what is this stuff? Let me poke holes into this, since I'm someone who understands the technology side, and I'm someone who understands the finance side. So it took a very, very snobby attitude towards it. Came into this, can't wait to poke holes into this and shatter this whole concept. So went directly to the source. Went to Satoshi's white paper and took a look at it. And as I was going through it, literally as I was reading it, my mind was like all over the place. I'm like, oh my God, there's so much more to this stuff. And it was, to me, that was, yeah, go ahead.
No, that serial entrepreneur kicked in, right?
That's exactly it. So for me, coming into this with a snobby attitude towards poking holes into this thing, yet having that entrepreneurial, opportunistic, open-mindedness to say, well, let me see where it's at. And as I was going through it, I'm just like, oh my goodness, this thing is incredible. There's so much more to this than what people are thinking of it to be. So immediately I knew that this thing was well beyond just cryptocurrencies, and where most people's focus was around that. While most people's focus was around that space, to me, I was like, no, there's so much more to this, and this thing is going to be. This is how it's going to have an impact in healthcare, and this thing is going to have how it will have an impact on compliance, and here's how this thing is going to have an impact on government and across the board. And immediately, I became a believer in this technology and what the impact that it would have on the world would be. So from there, really, from by the time I got done, I was like, all right, I know what my next focus is going to be. So that's where I started to put my entrepreneurial hat back on and started focusing on blockchain and digital currencies. And really, the digital currencies aspect was more. I came in more from an investment perspective, but really the technology piece and the opportunity piece was more focused on the underlying technology that was fueling it, and that was blockchain.
Excellent. Thanks for sharing that story with us. Is there a book that really inspired you along the way?
Inspired me to get into the world of blockchain? I wouldn't say. I would say it was an inspiration which allowed me to get into it. However, once I got into blockchain, certainly the white paper served as the catalyst to get me involved in it. And then beyond that, once I started getting into it, I just started immersing myself into all sorts of books that were out there around digital assets. And I would say if someone wants to really grasp and the concept around digital currencies and around specific, and I keep going back to digital currencies because the digital Bitcoin and the digital currencies were the first understandable use case for blockchain technologies. It's always a good place to start from, so people can grasp what it truly means. So for that, I would say read anything. What I started to do was there was a collection of recordings of lectures of Andreas Antonopoulos. So I would say go back to those. I can't remember the book, but if you just look up lectures by Andreas Antonopoulos, you'll see those. And of course, digital assets is another one. Digital assets and cryptocurrencies. There's a bunch of different ones that are out there. But if you do a quick Google or a quick search on Amazon around what's there's quite a few of them that are pretty good.
So let's go back pre-cryptocurrency days. How about from an entrepreneurial standpoint? Was there anyone that stands out that's influenced you?
Okay, so as an entrepreneur, I would say for me, someone who's always inspired me I would go back and I would say it's been my dad. My father was he came into this country as an immigrant fresh off the boat, and he was like for him, he didn't have a specific career to pursue, especially when he came here. So for him, he was very, very opportunistic about what to go after. So I saw him. He was really what we call a hustler, right? So he knew how to hustle, and those were things that as I was observing him, I learned to apply the same thing. So as an entrepreneur, what I started to learn was how to truly be opportunistic, and you never want to put the cart before the horse. So don't create a solution and then go looking for a problem. Identify what the problem is, and then the solutions are very, very easy to find, and then just go and sell it. And for me, that's where the entrepreneurial mindset came in, and that's why I always started to focus on emerging technologies and figuring out solutions for that within the enterprise space.
So obviously, you've got passion and drive, but what is it that really, pushes you to get up every morning to do what you're doing?
That's a good question. So for me, I think, look, ultimately you could look at, there's the perspective of the glass half empty or glass half full. For me, it's always about the mentality. So for me, if you are someone, it's all about yourself and the mindset that you have. So if you're someone who is going to be, someone who's going to be negative, then you can look at a dark, gloomy day outside and say, oh my God, this is what the world, that's how the world is like. So I'm just going to sit in here and spend the entire day in bed. But if you're someone who's optimistic and looking for opportunities in just about anything and looking for excuses to succeed, then you're going to take a look at that dark, gloomy day and say, interesting. Well, okay, well, I can't go outside. This is a great way for me to sit inside and take care of all the things that I normally wouldn't have been able to take care of if it was a brighter day outside and I was doing something outside and be on the out and about. So for me, it's all about the mindset. And for me, the mindset always has been just constantly challenging myself. What I do is I set certain milestones that I want to achieve. And as soon as I start seeing that I get closer and closer and closer towards achieving that, I'll immediately, before patting myself on the back and saying, great, I've accomplished it, I'll push that thing up. So all of a sudden, the next day when I wake up, that challenge, now I have a new challenge to accomplish. So I never give myself the opportunity to sit back and say, wow, look at all I've done. Instead, I always try to compare myself to people that are far better than I am. I set my sights on the moon, and I'm like, okay, well, great, I've been able to accomplish this, fantastic. But look, here's someone who I need to aspire to be like. And then the moment that I start seeing that I start getting closer and closer towards being like them, then I'll push myself even further and find someone else, because there's always someone bigger and better than you that's out there who is doing greater things. So if you can try to aspire to be them and ensure that you constantly start changing it as you start going closer and closer to your goal, you'll that's, for me, that's motivation.
Perfect. Thanks for sharing that with us. So obviously you found a problem and you've come up with a solution. Well, let's talk about the problem a little bit. You've got this Moviecoin. Talk about what that's about.
Sure. So let me sort of take a step back here, and before I talk about Moviecoin and the problem in, let's say, film financing and settlements, let me sort of for your audience give them a little bit of a background around where blockchain would come into this and how blockchain would apply across the board to a variety of industries. And then we'll use this as an example to talk about a specific industry that it addresses as well. So with blockchain, one of the things that blockchain allows you to do, and one of the big things that more and more people, the reason why people are seeing this thing as being this revolutionary technology, is it disintermediates. That's one very, very important concept, because at the end of the day, what blockchain allows you to do is it allows you to go after the two most primitive elements of that human beings want to address, which is trust and incentivization. Now, this conversation that we're having right now, right? We're doing it because there's a certain trust element, and you're asking me all these questions to verify and validate whether or not what I'm saying actually makes sense. And then after I've done that, I would have built out your trust, and then your audience would now see me as being a trusted authority. So If I can establish that trust, then I've accomplished one major hurdle to get closer towards transacting with someone. The second piece that it's going to address is, again, I'm doing this because I am incentivized to do it for my own set of reasons, whether it's, again, establishing myself as an authority, or just evangelizing the blockchain world, or promoting our organization and what it is that we're doing. And on the flip side, you're incentivized because you need to provide for your audience, a thought leadership. You want to educate them. Whatever your incentivizations are, and whatever my incentivizations are, it's crucial that our two incentivizations align in some format so that we can come together. And again, what does it allow you to do? It allows you to transact. So long as we can cover the trust and incentivization, that's the problem that's what's going to allow for us to transact and get involved in some sort of relationship, whether it's a financial relationship or even a non-financial relationship, but nevertheless some relationship in which we're both incentivized to move forward on. That's what blockchain allows you to do. Is blockchain allows you to solve for these two core fundamental issues. So the analogy that I like to give is that what the internet did to the impact that the internet had on how we interact is the impact that blockchain is going to have on the way that we transact. And blockchain technology, the way that you do that is it solves for four primary things when you take a look at any sort of an industry. Before I talk about the industry, though, I think it's also important for me to talk about one other thing, which is value. Today, the reason you're talking to me is because, again, there's some value that you're seeing and there's some value that I'm seeing, right? And this goes back to the incentivization piece that we spoke about earlier. Now, anything that has value is what we call an asset. That asset today, our perception of assets, generally before Web 1.0 came out, generally we treated assets primarily as physical assets and physical assets only. Then what we started to have is what we call intellectual assets, right? So whether you call that art or music, or we call it within the form of copyright, however we wanted to do it, there's those intellectual assets. So the whole point is, whether it's a physical asset, whether it's an intellectual asset, anything today that has any value, we qualify it as an asset. If it's an asset, then it's something that could be digitized. If it's something that could be digitized, then through the process of what we call tokenization in blockchain vernacular, it could be securitized. And it could be securitized in a way in which you have transparency, immutability, and it gives access to four primary things: accessibility, liquidity, security, and transparency across the board for any sort of an asset class. Now, if you think about that in the framework of asset classes, then this is going to be a technology that is going to revolutionize the way any industry it touches and the way that any industry operates. So now what I'll do is I'll take a step back and I'll give you an actual example of this. So take Hollywood. Hollywood is a very, very sexy industry. It's something that everyone wants to get involved in some way, shape, or form, right? But the problem in Hollywood generally has been that gaining access to the industry. I mean, it's when you talk about an old boys club, this thing is beyond an old boys club, right? Not even the old boys have access to it. It's only a select few that can actually get into it. So so anyone who wants to get involved in this space, while it's very sexy and everyone wants to do it, figuring out how to actually get into it becomes very, very difficult. That's the accessibility issue. Then for those who've actually got involved in it, then the problem becomes, well, now that I've put some money into a Hollywood film or into a slate of films or whatever it is, well, where's that money going? How do I account for it? How much profit am I generating? Right? It's called, there's actually a term for it, and I learned this once I got involved in this industry. It's called Hollywood accounting. Now, generally, whenever someone mentions Hollywood anything, oh, Mr. Hollywood, oh, that guy's so Hollywood, it's generally taken as a positive thing. Well, when it comes to accounting, Hollywood accounting is actually a bad term. And what that essentially means is that anytime anyone throws any money into a film, Hollywood accounting is essentially a term for putting your money inside of a black hole. You have no idea where that money is going. You have no ability to be able to account for it. Now, if you, of course, not that legally you can't, but you certainly can. But if you wanted to, it's going to cost you a pretty penny, and it's not that. So this affects the issue of transparency. Then the other issue becomes, well, once you've put in your money, you've gained access to it. Now you've put in your money, and you want to be able to exit because it's your capital. You want to be able to exit where you're locked in for quite a significant time period. And generally with films, it's going to be anywhere from 2 to 5 years, and with a slate of films, it'll be anywhere from 8 years and beyond. So if you were to tokenize this all of a sudden on blockchain, and this is how we got involved in it, was because we saw that here exists an inefficient market in which everyone wants to get involved in, but because of the lack of the right set of technologies, this is something that all four of these of the points that I had mentioned earlier, right? Accessibility, transparency, security, and liquidity are lacking. So this is where blockchain became a perfect use case for this. So we were actually approached by one of the leading Hollywood producers, Christopher Woodrow. He's the guy behind Black Mass, Hacksaw Ridge, and the Oscar-winning what's that one with Michael Keaton, Birdman. Mm-hmm. So he's someone who's a Wall Street guy. Young guy. He gets it. He understands the inefficiencies. So he came to us. He's like, and he's like, hey, he reached out to our founder and CEO, Igor Kamil, and he's like, hey, here's something that, with what you guys are doing, here's an industry that's where it could be a tremendous, it could have a tremendous impact on, and it's going to be accepted with open arms by the industry. So that was really the premise for Moviecoin, and that was really the genesis story of Moviecoin and how it came about. So now we're building together a platform in which your Hollywood films, if you wanted to, any Hollywood films that would get wanted to get financed, a slate of Hollywood films or individual Hollywood films will get financed through the process of tokenization, which is building out a smart fund, which comprises of Hollywood smart contracts, in which automation, disintermediation, all that is incorporated in, and you're able to transact, you're able to monitor cash flow of what those films are, what they're doing, accountability across the board, and you have access to a 24/7 market, which is going to be highly liquid because it's going to be traded across the world. So again, a perfect use case in which blockchain can be utilized, and we're seeking to essentially make Moviecoin be the first institutional grade use case for the tokenization of Hollywood financing and settlements.
So that's awesome. That's quite an accomplishment. So let's just take it through a process here. If I'm someone that has a movie that's, the script's written, everything's ready to go, and I need financing, but I don't necessarily want Hollywood to have it. Can I do it from an independent standpoint, or how would that work?
Yeah. So it's a good question. So I'll tell you, I'll sort of give you the art of the possible, right? Because as of right now, we're being very, very selective and very, very specific about the sort of use cases, even within that we can do. Because again, this is still an industry which is in its nascency. So right now, we've limited it to, our focus currently is not on independent films. It's on Hollywood blockbusters. That's the initial use case that we're targeting. However, in the future, there is, and again, this is one of the primary use cases for blockchain, and this is something that we get approached with all the time, is by independent filmmakers to say, hey, listen, it's very difficult for me to be able to gain access to these markets. If I wanted to do so, how can I go about doing so? Well, with a platform like Moviecoin, certainly in the future, that's going to be something that's going to be very, very easily be able to do so.
So perfect. So this is all up and running now, or you say you're running exactly where is it in the process?
So we are in the so BANKEX. What we do is, our approach is we find use cases, industry use cases, and then what we'll do with those industry use cases is we will partner up with the right folks. So we bring the technology and we bring the capital markets experience with us, and then what's lacking is the actual industry expertise itself. That's where we'll partner with the industry experts. In this case, with Chris Woodrow and his team of Hollywood producers and technologists. So we partnered with them, and we put together an MVP, which we validated what we're having, use case around that. And the next step for that is, now that we've done that, is to actually now do a capital raise to bring about to institutionalize this technology and bring it to the market. So that's the process that we're in right now.
So this is basically leveling the playing field, that anybody can invest in a Hollywood blockbuster. Is that correct?
That's correct. It's going to be the democratization of Hollywood financing.
So somebody that works at Amazon, or somebody that's, blue collar worker, they've got an opportunity to do this. So take me into that a little bit. So I've got some money and I want to invest in this. What happens next?
So right now, the regulatory markets, again, and I think this is a good point to also talk about regulation and compliance, right? So look, because we're talking about Hollywood, not just Hollywood, but because we're talking about actual securities, and because we're talking about investments, the way that these investments are treated, they're wrapped around regulation. So we ensure that everything that's done is done under the purvey of SEC guidelines. So everything is regulatory compliant. That's why we're doing what we call these security token offerings, which actually adhere to SEC guidelines. So for now, as of right now, there is it's the sort of individuals that can get involved are only those who it's a Reg D offering. So they have to be accredited investors, which means that you have to meet a certain certain criteria for investment purposes. However, in the future, as this technology starts to gain more and more adoption, and as people start to, and as the regulators start to wrap their heads around this, I can certainly see this being something where a source of a crowdfunding, so to speak, for even the lay person can get involved in something like this as more and more complex instruments start to get built out around this. So it's going to be similar to how we see the securities markets today, where the accessibility to those markets for certain instruments, it's only limited to accredited investors, but for other ones, there's even the common man has access to it. So as this industry starts to gain wider adoption and acceptance, I can certainly envision this, even the layperson being able to have access to it.
Perfect. So if the listeners are interested in finding out more, what's the best way for them to do that?
Check us out. Feel free to hit us up. Reach out to me personally. You could drop me a note on Twitter. You can find me at Serial Tech X. So Serial SERIAL Tech TECH and the letter X. So hit me up on Twitter. I'd love to talk more and again continue evangelizing and making blockchain a reality into this world.
Perfect. Well, thank you very much for being on the show. That's great information.
Pleasure. Thank you again for having me on.
Oh, you're welcome. So there you have it for this edition of the show. We'll see you the next time.
Thanks for listening to the T. Allen Haynes Radio Show with T. Allen Haynes. Conversations with elite business leaders from around the world. We will see you next time on the T. Allen Haynes Radio Show.